Joining us today is Aaron Cano. He is FreshDirect's SVP of Analytics and Marketing Operations, which is a really cool position because marketing and operations at FreshDirect are tied in so closely together. So having the data view of all of that from one perspective, one vantage point is really essential and important. So Aaron's insight-driven strategies have led to revenue growth for marquee companies such as Chase and 1-800-Flowers, and now, of course, FreshDirect. His key success driver is coaching C-level and marketing executives on how to leverage information to improve their strategic decision-making while ensuring a top-notch customer experience. So one of the things Aaron is set on is using data for storytelling so that the C-level folks and the marketing folks can really understand what's important about the data and not just get a bunch of numbers. In fact, Aaron was honored as a one-to-one customer champion by One-to-One Media for doing just that while at Flowers, for using data to ensure that great customer experience. And that's actually how long we've known each other, because I was the editor at the time and who bestowed Aaron with that honor of the one-to-one customer champion.
Although I have less hair now.
Yeah. Well, welcome, Aaron. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Well, thank you, Ginger. Pleasure to be here.
So since we're going to talk about data, I thought we could start with a few stats. Last week, the Labor Department reported that the prices U.S. consumers paid for groceries jumped 2.6% in April, the largest one-month increase for groceries since February of 1974, and meat, poultry, fish, and eggs categories rose 4.3%. Fruits and vegetables climbed 1.5%, and cereal and bakery products 2.9%. On the screen right now, you can see findings from Wombly that showed nearly 50% in grocery shopping overall. Similarly, Experian just came out with some numbers showing 41% increase in grocery shopping over last month. So people are they're out there buying tons and tons of food. And on the next slide, we can see that research from LEK Consulting found that online grocery shopping in the US increased from 13% of households in August 2019 to 39% in March 2020. That was the most recent numbers that they had. With nearly 40% of consumers expecting to continue shopping online for groceries permanently. And what's interesting on this slide here is that you can see FreshDirect, which is a regional provider of groceries, is on the list here with some heavy hitters, Amazon, Target, Walmart, who are all, have much further reach than FreshDirect. So Aaron, tell us how business has changed for FreshDirect since the COVID-19 lockdown.
Everything has changed. Basically, when you think about it, it took a disaster, right, to change people's minds. We've been spending years and years spending a lot of money to try and convince people to shop groceries online. Some with success and some not. But now a natural disaster has now caused people to have to go online, which is good for us, unfortunately, but a good thing. But it changed, the first couple of weeks in March, where traffic increased, but it took about a 2-week period where 600% increase in traffic, which just dramatically changed everything that we thought about the business and everything that we thought about customers, because it was not just new customers coming in, it was all these old customers that, again, we spend a lot of money on trying to get these lapsed or traded customers to come back to no avail. Now they're coming back without us paying money for them, right? So it changed a lot, but as importantly, the way that we process the business changed, right? So all these people came in, but the order size changed, right? So doubled and tripled the sizes. So we have a plant in the Bronx with a certain amount of capacity to do a certain amount of order volume. But all of a sudden, one order now looks like 3 orders in one. It dramatically changed the number of orders we can fulfill, which means we're not able to support as many customers that we had thought, right? So we had to dramatically change everything about our business, from marketing, supply chain, inventory management, just customer service calls went through the roof. So we didn't have enough staff to deal with that. So we had to, again, use data to reconfigure everything that we knew about the business in a 2-3 week time frame. And it was pretty dramatic.
It's incredible. So I know the customer experience is important to you and important to FreshDirect. And that, as you just said, you use data extensively to inform customer experience, marketing, and operations. Talk about some of the ways that you've used data to maintain the best possible customer experience overall with all these changes that you just talked about.
Yeah, I'll give you a couple examples. I mean, one with order size. So a lot of our competitors in the grocery stores, Amazon in particular, we're putting limits on things, whether it's 1 order per customer per week or limit the order size to a certain number. And we thought about those things also, but then looking at data and talking to customers, we realized that wasn't the right thing to do. So for example, customers who were able to get a time slot and orders went from $100 to $400, but that's because they were feeding multiple families. And if we put a limit on that, that means we're not allowing people to get fed, right? So one household may be actually feeding 3 households, or one apartment may be actually feeding 2 apartments. We got that from talking to customers, getting feedback, and actually looking at the data, what was in the orders. So then we thought about, all right, maybe we do 1 order per week, right? So in the same conversation, looking at data, people were ordering for different addresses because I was putting an order in for me and then one for my mother, one for my brother, other people who couldn't get a time slot. So again, if we put those limits on it, we would be constricting and not really doing our customers a good service. So we ended up doing, again, through data and testing, was putting a limit on the number of products instead. So instead of having 50 different products in your order, you can only have 40 different products. As many items as you want. So if you're buying cans of soup, you can get 50 of them, but you can't get 50 different types. So those kind of limits and put testing in place allowed us to control what actually went through the plant and allowed us to actually produce more orders. So again, using data in the plant and an operations side to make better decisions, all right? So that's one piece. And then another good example is looking at traffic coming into the site. Ginger and I shared this, and it's kind of interesting. We created a what I call a frustration factor, right? So again, using data, we're able to see who's coming to the site. You can count how many times people going to the website versus going to the time slot page and then just leaving. So being able to count how many times people are getting frustrated, coming in multiple times during the day or multiple times during the week, we capture that, and then as capacity built back up, being able to offer the time slots back to customers that, one, were loyal to us and that were more frustrated than others. So being able to prioritize our customers as we build up capacity using data, which is an interesting way to use it, which is fun.
Yeah,
but it worked out well. We got a lot of good feedback from customers.
That's awesome. And what's funny about that is I had seen online there was like conspiracy theory that FreshDirect and some of the other providers were actually favoring top customers and like keeping new customers out with their time slots, but actually, you're trying to balance serving both. So can you talk a little bit about what you've done for the top customer experience during this time?
Yeah, some of that, again, I know not to pick on our competitors, but a lot of them were closing down new customers, especially the online sites. But it's about capturing data. So in the last, I would say 4 weeks, we were able to double our capacity. Again, using data, and I can go through some of those things. But as we did that, it was a slow process. So trying to prioritize, how do you take care of your best customers first? So, we have loyal customers, we have metrics on who's loyal, and loyalty programs, whether it's, for us, it's called Chef Table, and it's based on the dollars you spent, number of orders, you become a Chef Table customer. Or if you've actually purchased a delivery pass, right, which means free delivery, but you have to buy into that. So those customers are more loyal to us. So what we did is we took that data, and some people have a weekly reservation and some don't. So as time slots became hard to get to, we actually proactively loaded up reservations for customers. Well, the ones that, every customer is a good customer, but some are better than others, right? So our more loyal customers, we actually proactively gave them a time slot in a weekly reservation. And then we sent them emails and voice shots and told them that it was there. Hey, we have a time slot for you, go get it. 80% of them converted to an order and have maintained those reservations. And the information we got back from them, emails and letters were, thank you, thank you, thank you for taking care of us, because we've been a loyal customer for so long, and now we'll never go anywhere else. So it's unique data needs, right? And you transfer that into unique solutions.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's one of those situations where kind of marketing and customer service are almost the same thing. I mean, you're not really spending money on marketing per se, but you're being proactive in providing the service, and it winds up creating more customer loyalty.
No, and we spend a lot of time with the customer service team and their data, and trying to understand every day, why are people calling up, what are the problems, and then how do we solve them, right, in a quick way. And the reservation thing was, the way that FreshDirect works is we all spend a lot of time together, but some things more manual. So this particular solution was a lot of people getting together in a short amount of time, in a matter of days, from idea to resolution, getting it out, because people just jump in and help, which is great.
So because of the way FreshDirect is set up, it sounds like there really needs to be a lot of collaboration among your team and marketing and operations. Who's involved in all these decisions when you're trying to figure out what's the best thing to do?
Everybody. I will say that the two things that I love the most about FreshDirect, and I've been there for 7 years if you don't count the sabbatical I took, is that they're customer centric and analytics centric combined. And it's those two things that really drive all of the conversations, and that's how we get along. So I spend a lot of time with the marketing team and the executive team. The analytics, for the most part, is enterprise wide. So my team gets involved in the plant and operation things, and how things flow through the plant and boxes, and what gets picked and how they get picked. We started getting more involved in HR analytics and how we hire and data that we use to do those things. Again, customer service data as well, and marketing and even merchandising. All things revolving data, my team somehow finds themselves involved in, good or bad. But that means that we have a lot of meetings, a lot of conversations. So as people generate ideas, we all share, and everybody gets into the weeds with everybody else, which sometimes is good and bad, right? You shouldn't want people getting into your stuff, but everybody gets into everybody's stuff, which I think is a good thing, because that's how you generate a lot of ideas, and nobody takes anything personally. But to answer your question about how do we generate these things and get along, is that there are a variety of scheduled discussions, right? A lot of ad hoc discussions, but every day we have an operations meeting at 9:30, 7 days a week. And we go through what's working, what's not working, and the good and bad, the ugly. And coming out of those things are discussions and ideas to do other things. And how do we improve the metrics? So it's less about sharing a metric or a number. It's more about why the number is, and what are we doing about it? And that generates a lot of ideas and more projects. There's also, my team does a lot of sharing, right? So once a week, I put together, Aaron's thoughts, if you will, and send out a, large PowerPoint document with just Aaron's ideas for the week. Granted, a lot of it is metrics, but a lot of it is just what I think about those metrics. And I share that with the senior management team, operations teams, the marketing teams, and we talk about these things, but that just generates more other ideas, and how do we solve problems, and how do we move those numbers along? And again, being centric on those analytics and the metrics helps us drive those things. So if somebody has an idea, we kind of vet through quickly, is a good idea or a bad idea. And since we're all fairly knowledgeable, it's easy to do. And sometimes people take it personally, sometimes they don't. But then you assign somebody to it. You assign an owner to that idea. It doesn't have to be the person who created the idea, because sometimes it's not in their realm. But then somebody goes off and puts it on their list, and you vet through it. Not doing work, but you're vetting through the idea and does it make sense or not. And then you come back to the senior management team or within your department and say, all right, this thing may work. And you put some pieces together, and then senior management team says yes or no. And it usually happens relatively quickly, which is good.
Yeah, definitely. Especially right now, the more agile you can be, the better at this time. So you were saying that you've got data coming kind of from all sides of the organization. Any other data, any external data that you use, social sentiment, things like that?
Yes, so we use a lot of, the voice of the customer is big in what we do every day. So we use Qualtrics a lot for research, and we have a lot of, I'll call it standard trackers that we look at for Net Promoter Score and other things. But we also do a lot of surveys. Some are more basic point and click, some are more visual and online driven. We use Hotjar a lot. So we actually watch how people use the website, and that drives a lot of our UX and design. We do some focus groups. We actually go out and talk to customers. If customer service gets a call about something and that generates an idea, somebody from the corporate staff may call up that customer and get more insights and more detail into what the situation is or what the idea is. And again, that might drive other things. So, and we also spend a lot of time on feedback on Twitter. We have a series of, we call them Net Promoter surveys, but there's a series of surveys that go out after you engage with the website, after you place an order, after you receive the order, and a few days later after you consume the food. And from that, there's a lot of open-ended questions. So we get a lot of feedback throughout the process and that customer experience. And that then every day, we spend time looking at those comments and using data mining to go through it to understand what we're hearing from the customers and what's working and what's not, and then how do we improve things.
Great, that's awesome. Any example of feedback that you got, say, in the past couple of weeks that really stood out that you acted on?
Well, actually, I should have put it up. I learned today, like we've been getting a lot of letters and emails from customers thanking us. Some are written by children and whatnot. So we took one today and we actually put it on the wall in the corporate office in multiple places. In all of our buildings, there's a letter from a customer thanking us for all the hard work that we're doing. So everybody in the organization can see it. And even in the mornings, I share some of those comments so people around the organization understand what's important and how customers are really feeling about us. Our Net Promoter Scores, we were tracking in the mid-60s, which to me was best in class, but now they're in the 70s, 75 every day, which, the only ones that get in the 70, 80 range are things like Apple and Tesla. So I consider us, what we're doing is dramatic. And the experience that we're providing is dramatic, and we're feeling it from the customers, which is great.
That's amazing. So great question from chat. When I think of DTC brands, I think they thrive in part because there are no data silos around customers. Is that an accurate attribute of companies such as FreshDirect, or despite the best intentions, data silos do emerge?
I would say for the most part, data is everywhere. And the only ones I would say is more of a silo is customer service data, but it's more of a operational thing because it's a separate database and we do have access to it. So my team has access to everything and anything across the organization. And people are very transparent. So if I have a need for data, I don't have access to it, the doors get opened, which is really nice to see. And what we do, so in the last couple of weeks, we spent a lot of time trying to operationalize some of the Google Analytics data that we didn't have access to, like browse data, which gets difficult to process through SaaS. So the IT folks have opened the doors for us to get some of that data in-house for us so we can play an easier way. So I would say internally, we have no real silos at all.
Awesome. So looking like a little bit kind of deeper into the processes, how do the analytics and marketing teams work together generally to make sure that you're aligned and that marketing is really using data to inform their strategies?
Well, because I spend a lot of time, one of the things over the years, I've had a lot of questions when we either moved offices or redesigned the offices where everyone wants my team to sit with the marketing team, which maybe I'm old school, but I'm totally against it. Only because the analysts like to sit by themselves with the analyst folks and learn, where the marketing folks just want to be with us to ingest everything, but then it becomes too cumbersome. So that's not one way that we get together. But we do spend a lot of time. So like I mentioned, so each week the marketing team has their weekly staff meeting with all 30, 40 folks in there. I go and present, or my team comes in and present. And again, we talk about what we're learning and what they're learning, which is great. It generates a lot of ideas. But I also share back to them what we're learning about what they are doing, right? We do that in smaller meetings, so direct mail has their meetings, but also in these bigger groups, we share the details. So again, being very transparent of the good, the bad, and the ugly, which is really nice. But then also the marketing folks make sure that when they're having meetings, that somebody from my team is there when they're talking about strategy or campaigns. So we help them drive into the test design. So if they do a campaign that's not designed the right way, they know they're going to get yelled at. So they make sure that somebody from my team is there and make sure it's done well, because they don't want to go in front of the senior management team and present something that somebody in my team hasn't vetted through in a large way. And that's happened over time. Like it took, when I got in, took a good 6 to 9 months to change that culture and really get people ingrained into, again, those two things, being customer centric and analytics centric. But it comes top down. So the executive team, they are all into the numbers and the metrics and the analytics. And they will not have someone present to them something that one hasn't been vetted or doesn't have real data in it. Assumptions or ideas don't work. It's, give me numbers, give me the data, and show me the proof. And that's really how we operate. So we work really well together. The same thing, my team, they're looking at data every day. So they share a lot of their marketing ideas with the marketing team because they see it. And that actually is very well receptive in most cases. So it works well.
That's important, I think, because good ideas can come from anywhere in the organization. And since
Exactly.
they are, seeing it day to day, I mean, why not, right?
No, and a lot of the, we try and let the marketing team do a lot of the, I'll call it the basic analytics. So we put a lot of data in their hands, right? Whether it's through daily emails with data in it or through Power BI and some dashboards. So their basic campaigns, they can analyze themselves, right? And they'll vet through us once they do the learning, make sure it's correct. But they have access to data every day to do their own analytics. And I want them to be analytical because it's less work that my team has to do. And then my team then does more of the deep dives into why things are happening versus what's happening. And that really works well. So when somebody new comes on, there's a whole onboarding process to teach them the tools. So the marketing folks are going into Google Analytics and they're going into Power BI and they're getting numbers and learning on their own, which is great.
Speaking of Google, as a FreshDirect customer, full disclosure, I noticed that sometimes when I go and order and then I go check my Gmail, I'll have one of the Google ads, saying, "Hey, FreshDirect, you missed your lettuce order," whatever. Yeah. So, are you still doing marketing, and is there a lot of marketing happening or minimal?
I would say not a whole lot, right? So initially we turned basically everything off, with the exception of search, right? So someone's searching for FreshDirect, you want to make sure they come in. I would say in the last 2 weeks, we're slowly turning the dial back on, especially in Manhattan. So as capacity is built up, we're now actually doing a lot of digital ads in Manhattan for new customers and like a lot of retargeting. Like I mentioned, I had all this traffic that came in over the last couple of weeks. We've saved that data, right? So now we're going back after all those people that came in, non-customers, and going back and doing some retargeting, especially in Manhattan, because they can come in today and get a time slot. And on email, we're now doing more regular marketing for customers. So people are starting to get their fresh deal emails on Thursdays. Although they're non-promotional, there's no need to do, fancy, give away some money.
Right. So why marketing in Manhattan?
Because Manhattan, you can get a time slot.
Well, like what? So why in the such a dense area can you actually get a time slot?
Because when you think about FreshDirect and customers and families, our customers are not in Manhattan anymore. They left. They're all out in the Hamptons. They're all out in upstate New York. They actually left the city. So therefore, we have a lot of availability in Manhattan. And for the most part, our capacity is largest in Manhattan. When you think about, we have depots in Manhattan, so we could always increase capacity in a larger way. And also with Express or Food Kick, which we have dark stores in Manhattan to do deliveries. So our capacity is much larger in Manhattan.
Right. So Jeff asked a similar question. Since the demand has been so strong, how has that affected media spend and media choice?
Easy. No choice, no spend. So, but that said, we are thinking about, not knowing what the future holds, because we really don't know. We have a lot of contingency plans set up over the next, 3 to 6 months, depending on how things change or improve or not, how we're going to spend our money on media. There are plans to spend on media. Again, like in Manhattan, as capacity gets built up and we have more and more capacity, we want to fill that capacity. And it's going to be a point in time where capacity and demand, align. We're not there yet, but that's when we start doing more marketing.
Right. So actually, around that, Todd has a question. If you were to magically, if COVID rather, were to magically end on September 1, what percentage of the increase that you've experienced since March 1 would go away because people return to traditional ways of shopping? Any prediction?
That's a great question, and we've spent a lot of time having internal conversations about it. And I've read a lot of research and papers on this. My assumption is that 40% of those new customers are new to online grocery, right? So people have come to FreshDirect that are, they've come from Amazon and they've been using Whole Foods or or Peapod, but now they've come here. That's a different group versus all this new traffic or new customers to online grocery. Once they see and feel, and we've heard this, that, oh my God, how come I haven't tried this in the past, right? I think that's gonna be a real thing. So I'm hoping, well, my plan is 40%, but also when you think about it, even if COVID goes away, and it will at some point, I think people have changed and they're understanding more about that you can get quality food delivered. Where before it was, I'm going to the store, so I want to touch and feel the tomatoes. And now they understand the value of the food and the product. And it's less about convenience. It's now, I don't have to go to the store. So I think a lot of it's going to stay. And that's why we continue to work through and building that capacity, because it's only going to get more for us. So we're doing everything we can to try and fulfill more orders. We're doing a lot of things like pickup. Like years ago, this whole notion of click and collect, which I hate the term, was a big thing years ago. Now it's coming back, right? So we've actually opened up a lot of pickup places all over the suburbs to try and get, you can't get a time slot, but you can go pick it up if you want.
Yeah, that's really convenient. Any other current customer experience related projects that you're using data for?
Lots. So actually we are doing, so we actually redesigned the homepage to make it more user friendly. So that's actually, I think, probably a couple of days, maybe a week away, which is really good. The other thing is we have this other brand called FoodKick. We're actually ingesting FoodKick, which is basically on-demand service in Manhattan. We can go on and you get a delivery within 2 or 3 hours. We're putting that inside of FreshDirect. So if you're in Manhattan, I think by the end of the week, you're going to be able to get, you'll see a toggle on the homepage, and you turn it on or off. If you turn it on, you're going to get a whole different experience in terms of here's a product you can get within the next 2 hours. So we're changing the whole UX design of the FreshDirect website to ingest this on-demand business, and that's today.
That should be an interesting experience for Thanksgiving.
Yes. Yeah.
So Ken asks, any trends on payment method usage, loyalty cards, private label that you're seeing, and any requests from customers for different kinds of payments?
Yeah, we get them a lot, right? It's whether, I would say 3 years ago, e-check was a big thing, but that's the thing in the past. But using more, going into PayPal and Google Pay and those things are all on the list of things that we're working through. But not too big of a demand, but they are on the list of UX things to work through.
Right. So I saw a stat from Forrester Consulting that businesses that use data intelligence to drive strategy are 58% more likely to exceed their revenue goals than companies that don't do that. Any thoughts on that in terms of, the way FreshDirect works?
If I didn't agree with that, then I'm in the wrong job. No, I totally agree, right? Because it's managing based on data, right? And everything that we do, even the way that we put together our budgets and our plans and our strategies, are all driven by data. I spend a lot of time even with finance to drive through how we present and information to the board of directors. Here's the plans. It's all driven by data and not by I'll call it strategies, right? Strategies are great, but you have to have the numbers behind it to grow that. So yeah, driven everything by fact, and every conversation we have with the senior management team is all driven by data. We're constantly spending time going through what's working, what's not working. Sometimes it's driven by anecdotal ideas. So one thing with FreshDirect is that all the employees are basically customers. And one of the problems we have is that they all think that their experience is the best experience. But the employees are not the customers, and it's not the same thing. So especially with the senior management team. But I had this experience, and I'm like, so? That's you. You are not the customer, right? So a lot of times we have to take those ideas and vet them through real customer experience to show the data. No, that is not real. That's just you. It's not what the customers want. But again, the same thing. Driving those discussions and those strategies with real information allows you to be successful. My opinion.
Yeah, not too many. Focus group of one can be handy, but not really the end all.
We get a lot of that.
I know, I'm sure. So I just want to remind everyone who's listening, if you have any other questions for Aaron, I know I've asked a few during the conversation. I've got a couple more questions that I'll jump into, but if you have anything, feel free to just put it in the QA box. So what have you learned during the past 2 months that might change how you use data for customer experience and marketing going forward, or reinforce what you have been doing to continue doing it?
A lot of the, I mentioned the customer service data, a lot of the GA data is cumbersome, and you're getting that in more real time and putting that in formats that we weren't thinking about before. So in the past, when you think about your GA data or just browse data, which is just tremendous, you would never think about bringing that in-house into your warehouse or into a cloud because it's too much. But now I'm like, yes, we need this because we need to make some more real-time decisions. I can't wait 4 hours to process data to make a decision. I need it now. So those kinds of things, and building out, further building out our customer, I'll call it data mart or infrastructure. Now I personally have more leeway with the senior management team to go get the funding to do those things, because now they see the value more so than they saw it in the past, because now we're making real-time decisions and I need it more real time. So that, I think, was a good outcome of that situation.
Yeah, and actually Todd again has a related question. He is on it today. Thanks, Todd. So are you working with any of the data firms in grocery, like dunnhumby, Catalina?
No, that doesn't mean we can't. And we bring in some interesting data as to our competitors in terms of what stores and some traffic to those competitors, but not real grocery data or transaction data, no.
Right.
But that would be interesting.
Yeah, definitely. And similarly, how do you work with either data providers or partners, marketing partners, your agency, for example, on like projects related to data or data supported?
Yeah, for the most part, there are 2 of them that we work with in a real, well, 3. We use Napkin as our source for Google Analytics. So anytime we want infrastructure changes, we kind of go through them, but that's just, but Tombras is our digital agency. So we share and monitor a lot of data with them in terms of looking at digital campaigns and how we do retargeting. We pass them a lot of data on our customers in terms of segmentation work and work that my team is doing. We pass it to them and they combine it with a lot of that traffic data so we can better understand the marketing. We also work with Blend 360, as Ginger, and we do a lot of other work with them in terms of, well, it's attribution work, understanding channels, customer value, things that are more large data centric that I don't want my team spending their time on. I'll give it to somebody else, right? We purchase a lot of demographic data. We do a lot of prospect targeting. We have, I'll call it a audience engine or an acquisition database that we do a lot of our work on for acquisition purposes.
And of course, the question on everyone's mind, if you're not in Manhattan, how do you get a time slot?
It depends what time of day you go on the website, but you can. So for the most part, and we service Philadelphia, DC, Westchester, Jersey, Long Island, parts of Connecticut. For the most part, you can get a time slot 3-4 days out. The way our system works, it's 7 days, and that's it. So those first couple of weeks we talked about, we sold out 7 days. We were done. So each day we would open up that 7th day once we pass it, and it was a lot. But now we're 3-4 days out. You can't get one tomorrow. You live in Jersey, but you might be able to get one for Sunday.
Right.
You have to plan ahead.
Definitely. So Peter asks, what analytics tools are most important to the work your team does? Because you mentioned SaaS.
That's the only one I care about. So I am, and for years have been, a huge fan of SaaS. Bar none, That's the only analytic tool I will ever use, right? Like I mentioned before, we use Power BI. I don't view Power BI as an analytic tool. It's a reporting tool. There's a difference, right? You bring data down, but it's just really reporting. But SAS is the tool that we use, I would say, for 80% of the work that we do on my team is driven through SAS. There's some things that are in business objects, but not a fan.
So any advice that you would give on making sure that marketing folks are really getting the most out of the data?
Yeah, one, like I meant, it's teaching them to be self-service. Because I think the more that they learn how to do things themselves, the more questions they ask, which lead to other things. So I want the marketing folks to ask more questions about data, and ask more questions about metrics and understanding. That just leads to other things. So the more you can educate the marketing team on using tools, whether Power BI or even Excel, right, which is sometimes a stretch. But the more they get into it, the more they become data centric, if I can use that term, the better it is for everybody.
Right. And of course, Ken wants to know, is it possible to take a tour of the facility?
Yes, we've done tours. That is possible. Although today the tour would be my dining room.
Aaron, thank you so much for sharing all of the information that you have shared with us today on how FreshDirect uses data. It's really interesting and creative, and it's been really informative, so thanks.
No, my pleasure. Thank you.
And I want to thank everyone for attending. Hopefully we see you next week to hear about retaining customers' loyalty as businesses unfold and start to open up more and more post COVID-19. Our speaker is Deb Gabor. She is an expert in brand and crisis strategy. She'll provide some advice on communicating in ways that shows customers that you value them, determine what customers truly expect at this time, and how you should be working with influencers in a way that will support what you're doing and not backfire. And with that, thanks again for attending, and have a fantastic rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Thanks, bye.